Early childhood education is one of the most important investments we can make for our future. Across America, more than 9.7 million children between the ages of birth and the age of 5 are supported by early childhood educators. It's a workforce that spans more than 2.2 million workers. Yet, access to affordability and equity in the space remains a significant challenge. It is estimated that state preschool programming only services about 37% of 4-year-olds and only 9% of 3-year-olds across the country, while the average annual base cost of childcare for 2 children can exceed upwards of $28,000 annually, placing tremendous pressure on working families today. This data comes to us courtesy of the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment and the National Institute for Education Research. This week, I had the privilege of sitting down with my friend Michele Asher. She is a senior educational advisor for Centers for Excellence at Primrose Schools to discuss how we can create a more equitable and inclusive early childhood educational system for everyone. She draws on her decades of experience in educational leadership, special education, behavioral guidance, and staff development. Michele shares a powerful perspective and asks the question, what intentionally happens when we view the world through the eyes of a child? Together we explore the quality of high-quality early education, the importance of supporting educators, and advancing strategies for advancing inclusion, and why equity in the earliest years can shape outcomes for a lifetime. Join us for a conversation focused on building stronger foundations for both children and families, and creating opportunities which allow each learner to thrive. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Michele, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk to you all about your work in early childhood education. It's great to see you, and happy Thursday to you, my friend.
Yeah, happy Thursday. Let's do this.
We're almost at Friday, so we're going to finish with a bang, right?
Sounds good to me.
That's exactly right. So, Michele, I wanted to start our conversation because I know one of the philosophies you hold near and dear is looking at the world through the eyes of a child. And you say if more people did that, not only in education, but in society at large, we would have a much different view and perception of the world. And I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by asking you about why you believe so strongly in that philosophy, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much beauty in childhood. Personally, a newborn baby is the greatest gift in the world to me. And you watch them grow at these young ages, and they experience everything with wonder and joy and curiosity. and before life has a way of creating narratives and storylines and having us wait for the other shoe to drop or looking for something to be wrong, the eyes of children see everything with wonder and see it as what's right. And that is something that I would love us as a society, a human race to get back to, is really embracing the idea of what is going right, what is going well, and not always waiting for that wrong thing to happen or for something to be wrong. There is just too much good happening around us every day. And I love looking at that through the eyes of children.
Absolutely. Now, you work for school district in a company called Primrose Schools, and I know they are pros, and they've built a reputation for providing high quality early childhood care and education through its balanced learning approach and nationally accredited programs. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the great work that Primrose Schools does and why you love working there, my friend.
Absolutely. Right. So Primrose Schools is a birth through kindergarten early childhood space, and it's actually a franchise company. So we are located in many states throughout the US, in many different markets. And I was drawn to Primrose because I believe that the space where you can see the magic unfold is in early childhood. That is the opportunity to really start to teach children skills. That's the foundation for the rest of their life. And Primrose truly embraces the notion that who children become is as important as what they know. And so it's that shaping of children through experiences. We blend a lot of different learning philosophies in our balanced learning curriculum. However, at the end of the day, routine, structure, consistency, when taken into complement with, of course, those foundational social emotional learning skills, as well as academic skills. And our balanced learning curriculum does a beautiful job of capturing that. It's rooted in belongingness. And so finding spaces where every child feels like they belong and they can see themselves represented is really important to us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, one of the reasons that I'm excited to talk to you today is because you and I share the same synergy about being lifelong learners committed to inclusion, and I know that your background in education and your professional background spans behavioral guidance, special education, staff development, and educational leadership, my friend. So, looking back on your journey, how has your understanding of equitable education evolved over the years, my friend?
Yeah. So it's a lifelong journey. And of course, what I know today is nothing that I knew when I was a 22-year-old graduating from college with my first teaching license. I will say a big turning point for this point of my career and this focus on special education coincided with my sister. My older sister had a child who was born with disabilities. And it was a journey. I grew up in a very small town. She still lives there. I'm no longer there. But watching her journey with him and his high level of needs and the inability of a school system to provide him what he needed, and what those barriers were for her, has always been really close to my heart. So I want to just start out with that. It was a personal connection with my family that led me to realize, wow, there is a lot of work to be done in this space for so many voices that aren't heard. Now that I live in a more of a metropolitan community, and of course my office is in Atlanta, where the company I work for is based from, I really want to bring that to light and to the front of everything that happens. So every decision that's made when it comes to our curriculum, FF&E in the classroom, the toys, the tools, any of the items, I always do want that lens to be in the front of everyone's mind. How does this impact all learners? How does this help all learners? But also, how does this help learners who might need a little more or need something different? And are we always taking that into consideration? What is it like to be that parent? What is it like to be teachers who don't have the background that I have per se as a behavior specialist and a special educator and all the things that I've done? how do I take that learning and that knowing and bring that into spaces where people feel like they can digest it and learn from it without having to do the formal education that I did. And I don't know if that's quite answering what you're saying, but it's a lot of different pieces that have kind of come together over the years. And it's my heart. Those are some of my favorite years when I was coaching and teaching in a special education behavior classroom, a federal setting 3 program. And I still have close relationships with those children. And this is years have passed now. And I still talk to their parents and them. And yeah, it's just been a lifelong love. And I don't know how to articulate it sometimes. It's hard to say, but it's just there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Michelle, I know you know a bit about my story and that I have cerebral palsy. And, special education has a big place in my heart, my friend. So I'm curious to have you put on your special education hat for just a moment and talk to me about how we improve the quality of education for students with disabilities because, you're in a unique position working in early childhood education because, I view early educators as one of the first lines of possibility and prosperity for children with special needs when it comes to their educational process. So I'm curious to ask you your perspective on how we improve the quality of special education, my friend.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and I think it's twofold in a lot of ways. The first barrier that I see is the misidentification of children with special needs at a really high occurrence rate right now, which I believe comes from a lack of knowing and understanding how to teach skills that some children might not yet possess. And so, in terms of just in this early education space, I do see one of the barriers is that there are a lot of children who, because maybe they don't learn in a traditional air quotes way, or they haven't learned to do this certain behavior or this certain skill yet, they're being channeled into a special education lane, for lack of a better word, when maybe it's not appropriate. And I think that pulls from the resources that can go to children who truly do require those services. And so my first action item is always, how do we build up the skill sets of teachers to really differentiate instruction, to understand what are common learning barriers, what is developmentally appropriate, and at the end of the day, how do I teach these skills to children, to all children, right? Once we get past that, then I think that leaves a lot of space that's wide open for us to really focus in on. Now we have a group of children with special needs that have been formally diagnosed and have a disability that requires a certain level of service that we need to provide for them. And until we start to free up the space to do that, the focus won't be there because the system is being weighed down and watered down right now. And I believe a lot of it is just a lack of teacher training, prep, and knowledge and support. Whether it's a child with a disability or a child that does not have a diagnosed disability, I think it impacts all learners because of that. And I think it leaves teachers feeling frustrated and families as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on your years working on staff development, I'm wondering your thoughts on how we support teachers through this journey because we all know teachers are typically underpaid and asked to do a lot of extra work that they sometimes aren't trained for because teachers are often asked to be psychologists or a shoulder to cry on for children and sometimes families. So I'm curious from your perspective, from a staff development perspective, how can we better support teachers so that they can feel confident and prosperous when they go to support students and protect their own mental health? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. Well, I was a classroom teacher for many years, and I think your strongest, greatest teachers struggle when they feel like they're failing. It has nothing to do often with the child or the behavior. I think it sometimes comes from this place of, I'm not meeting this child's needs. I'm not being successful. And so I don't know what to do. And I think it's really hard to create a culture where it's safe for teachers to say, I don't know what to do, but I feel like I'm failing right now. So number one is, how do you create a space where teachers can come to you and say that, instead of a list of what this child isn't doing, why this doesn't work, why I won't try this. I do believe it comes from this inner space of wanting to be successful and do great work, but not feeling like they are. And that requires a space where they can be vulnerable and say, I don't have the first idea what to do right now. Could you partner with me? Can you help me find somebody who can? Or is there something I can do? Because the training is the training. And we're not going to overhaul teacher training models anytime soon. However, what we can do is help teachers to recognize that I'm here to partner with you. And that was a big part of the work I was doing before I left the public school system to go to Primrose. Was I was working as a behavior specialist, and I was partnering with teachers one-on-one to work through challenging situations with children. And I'm telling you, the number one skill is talk less, listen more, and let them understand that whatever you tell me, I am going to be open-minded and be willing to change my mind about any situation, as long as you are too. And if we both can commit to that, we are willing to have our minds changed and try something different that might not feel comfortable at first, that's when the work begins. That's when I saw so much magic happen. And children's lives were transformed, and teachers started to feel more successful when we both went into it saying, I might not have the right answer as a behavior specialist. You might not have the right answer as a teacher, but let's look at this child individually, look at our data inputs, and let's start to come together and rally around them and see, what do they need in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I'm also curious to your perspective on the modern definition of educational excellence and modern education today, because it means that's a concept that could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I'm curious for you, what does educational excellence mean today, my friend?
Mm-hmm. I had not even a hard time, but I took me a while, and I was reading through the questions you'd sent me and thinking about this. Excellence is a big word, and it can often be confused with perfection. And excellence and perfection are not the same thing. Excellence is, I believe, rooted in personal integrity and how you approach a situation and what you bring to those around you. That is excellence. That's not perfection. And so Brene Brown said it best to me, which was, I am more concerned with getting it right than being right. And to me, that is the essence of what excellence is that I don't have to be right. My solution, my strategy, my thought might not be the right one for this situation, but I do want to create a space where I know we can all come up with these thoughts and ideas together to get to the right place. And that's going to involve a lot of flexible thinking and adaptability and changing. And it's also not always choosing the next cool thing or the next it thing. And, not always trying to be that front runner who's changing. Sometimes we're doing things really, really well, and we just forget to step back and recognize that. Like, hey, look what we are doing well, and look what is going right. Back to that first question you asked me. It's just important to see that those micro steps of goodness every single day. And that comes from trying to get it right, not be right.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Michelle, you spent a significant amount of time helping to develop teams and support educators through their educational journey. So I'm curious to ask you, what key ingredients do you believe goes into creating an organizational culture or school culture to help staff and parents thrive? Because it's all about building community and collaboration, isn't it? But I want your perspective on the matter as well, my friend.
Right. Yeah. I mean, community, collaboration, a positive culture. Those are buzz phrases that come up everywhere. And then, of course, the $1 million question is, well, how do you get it? How do you build it? It doesn't happen overnight. It's a million different moments and opportunities where you choose kindness. You choose to act instead of reacting. You choose courage. I think courage is a big one. To be willing to say the hard thing, to be willing to ask questions that lead to answers that might make people feel uncomfortable. But doing it in a way that is, I am here as a partner. I'm here in partnership. I am not here as someone who wants to be confrontational. I am here as an ally. And the only way we can really build a strong community and a strong culture is by creating the space through trusted relationships, of course, that allow for courage to have hard conversations. And I have to trust that the people that are in the room with me, they can hear what I have to say because they know that it's coming from a place of kindness. It's coming from a place of integrity. It's coming from a place of, I want us to do better because I want to think, what is the best outcome for children right now? Every one of our meetings, every discussion, everything we do should always revolve around what is the best outcome for children in this situation, not for Michele, not for the school district, not for the money. It's about what do the children need from us right now.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, I'll follow up with this. How will you balance? And I realize budgets aren't your bailiwick, but I'm curious to get your personal opinion on how we can balance the need to keep the district or educational districts in the black versus the best interest of the child from an educational perspective. What are your thoughts there?
Well, clearly it always comes down to priorities.
Yeah.
And in every community, whether you have a school board, whether you have your leadership team, whether it's a privately owned daycare, at the end of the day, you need to determine what your priorities are and where you're going to put your money. We all know that it's where you put your money, your time, and your children, right? Those are supposed to be like your three biggest things in your life that you love the most. That's what they always say. Yeah. And this is involving all three. So how do we determine those priorities? Somebody like me or yourself, and I have these conversations, I'm going to push for equitable learning opportunities. I'm going to push for different learning environments. I'm going to push for teacher training to help differentiate and work with the needs of all children in a more better informed way. And there are people who are going to do the same thing when it comes to other areas. For example, maybe it's music, maybe it's learning a new language. And I think we end up pitting ourselves against each other a little bit, where music is more important than special education, or whatever it is. Math is more important than learning to cook or sew. And we get caught in that trap of prioritizing what's more important for children to learn, and then that's where the money ends up going. And I'd like us to start rethinking that instead of being pitted against each other and fighting for your one sole thing, we need to be fighting for what's best for children. And I think we can all hopefully agree that it isn't just one area isn't best for children. It's creating well-rounded children who have a deep base of learning and knowledge to draw upon and experiences. That's what builds a strong future. It's not when we spend our time fighting over this classroom needs more paras and this classroom needs more this and we need more that. We're not coming together in a community. And this goes back to your culture question. And that's why I think school culture gets so low is it's somehow subversively pitting people against each other to have to fight for maybe their passion area instead of coming together and figuring out how can we all share and find an equitable way to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michele, I want to go back and ask you a different version of my first question about seeing the world through the eyes of a child. What do you think educators and everyday people can learn about empathy, compassion, and the art of human connection if they looked at the world through the eyes of a child? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yes. Oh, I mean, I think we're in a space right now in the world we live in where we're at a breaking point, and I'm choosing optimism. I think that people are recognizing that we've become too disconnected and too disengaged by, as we're sitting on a screen, of course, talking to each other, but by screens and by technology and firing off emails or text messages or checking social media and using technology in ways that have not furthered our ability to connect, even though we are in theory more connected. For example, the fact that we can do this is an amazing thing. And there's such a level of disconnection because people don't have that real face to face, that real tangible where I can sense how you're feeling. I can see what's happening. I can step in before anything even happens in a classroom because I can see through nonverbals and read the room, as they say, and know, oh boy, this person's about to be triggered and there's about to be something to happen as a teacher. So now I know that I need to go in. And I think a lot of those nuanced skills have been lost. The art of just being and existing in the same space with one another. We've gotten further away, but I think it's being noticed, and I think people are coming back to that traditional. Let's look each other in the eye. Let's be face to face. Let's embrace this idea of even when you don't care for somebody, even if they don't believe the things you believe, I want to lean into them and I want to get closer to them because I know the more I learn, the better off I'll be, which isn't to say I'm going to embrace or agree with them, but it is to say that I'm willing to take the time to learn and get closer. It's so much harder to not like somebody when you're closer to them and trying to talk to them with dignity and respect and learn about why they feel the way they do, why they act the way they act.
Yeah, Michelle, I believe that early childhood educators and people who work in early childhood education have the first opportunity to build positive character and habits in the eyes of children. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the importance of building positive character and habits in the ecosystem of early childhood education and the responsibility you think early childhood educators and educational professionals in general should have when it comes to building things like positive character and habits. What are your thoughts, my friend?
Yes, I believe character education should be a pillar of all education, but in the early childhood space. At Primrose Schools, we have a character development program. It is woven into everything we do. We have puppets, our Primrose friends, that we use for role play and modeling. We teach core skills, compassion, curiosity, cooperation, problem solving, and it's woven throughout every experience a child has during the day with our balanced learning curriculum and our approach to teaching and learning. But more than that, it's in how you talk to children and teach them feelings. So, for example, one of the projects that I worked on over the last couple of years was developing these cards, and there's a range of emotions and bravery, curiosity, feeling like nervous. And we're teaching these skills to 3-year-olds. Now, I can think of plenty 30 or 40-year-olds who wouldn't be able to tell me actually what does it mean if I'm feeling nervous versus scared versus worried versus, and when you believe that children can, they do. And
Mm-hmm.
so definitely getting into that space where you're just never thinking that they can't do it. They can learn it. It's exposing them to the language. It's exposing them to this is what that might feel like in your body. This is what you might want to do, and then giving them options to learn. If I'm feeling nervous, these are a couple strategies I can try when I'm a 3-year-old, and I can learn to talk about nervousness. And that, my friend, is what's going to change the trajectory of humanity and what's happening for children is starting at a young age and really embracing that they can do these things. It's that we didn't learn how to do them, maybe some of us as adults. So it feels so hard for us And yet they just open eye awe can talk about bravery like it's no big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I asked you earlier about what inspired you to get into education,
Mm-hmm.
and you shared that with me. So I will ask you to share a message with me about your message to anyone that wants to get into this field and how it can positively impact not only your professional life but your personal journey through life. So, what's your message to inspiring educators, my friend?
Yes. I've always been a learner. I loved school. And I don't think you have to love school to teach and be in education, but I'm not going to lie to you. I love school. I love learning. I am a nerd at heart. I love to read anything I can read about any topic. I just sign me up. Um, you have to be curious. You have to want to be able to never be stagnant or satisfied with things just being the way they are. When I hear people say that's just the way it is, or when I hear people say, well, this was a waste of my time, I have nothing to learn, those are the two markers for me that your time in education is done. So if you are a person who feels like this is just the way it is, I can't do anything, or I have nothing to learn, or I have nothing to offer, then you are not meant to be in this space. This is a space of inspired thinking, seeing the good, wanting to do better, wanting to see everyone around you um, really, figure out and navigate who they are. What do they want? Where are they going to end up someday? And that's going to look different for every child. And you have to have such a thick skin because you aren't going to see success a lot of days in the way that traditional success is defined. You may find out 20 years later that child never forgot about you. You may find out in the moment when they come and give you a hug every day. And there's going to be everything in the middle of that. And you have to be okay knowing that I have this inner compass inside of me that is trying to steer minds, whether it's my colleagues or it's children, in a way that inspires them to figure out who they are and what they want to contribute to the rest of the world. And so all you're doing is helping them unlock what's inside of them. You're not giving it to them, you're just helping them figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I want to share a quick story about myself personally. So, I believe strongly in the power of resilience. In fact, one of the ways that I live my life is by saying that resilience is the answer to the test once adversity strikes. And one of the reasons I believe that is because of my middle school principal. Michelle, when I was 9 years old, I found out that I would never be able to walk for the duration of my life without assistance. And my middle school principal, her name was Dr. Carol Cruller, she called me down to her office one day and she said that the only limitations on my life will be the artificial ones that I place on myself personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts on how resilience and mentorship are interconnected, my friend.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, first of all. That's a beautiful example of when someone sees you for who you are, right? And they see possibility,
Mm-hmm.
which is the sister of resiliency, is possibility. And I believe they're extremely connected because resiliency is learned through experiences, right? If you don't go through tough times, it's hard to develop that armor, that set of skills, and tough can be one thing to one person and could be easy to the next person. And so I think that's where mentorship comes in, is that instead of getting caught comparing your tough to my tough to Susie's tough to anyone else's tough, that doesn't matter. The hard thing is happening to you, whether I can identify with it or not. So how do I then come in and ask you questions to learn more about your experience and to draw from it? to help guide you in a path that you feel most successful with. And I think the greatest coaches, the greatest mentors, the greatest teachers have the ability, they possess this trait, this skill to talk to people, listen, and help the person who they're speaking with find a solution. And even if it's one that maybe I thought of myself right away, I didn't tell them, I didn't fix it. I just walked them down a path and partnered next to them, shoulder to shoulder, until they got to a place where they found something that they were invested and ready to do and could believe in, which is yourself. And I can't believe in you for you. Like your principal couldn't believe in you for you, but she
Mm-hmm.
believed in you. She believed in you and gave you some tools to believe in yourself and say, I'm not going to let this stop me from wherever it is I want to go, obviously, because look at you now. So it didn't stop you, but it was a barrier, and she helped you identify it. And I'm sure she asked you questions and was that person that made you think. And then you develop these solutions and these strategies and whatever it's that you've been doing in the years since 9 years old to get you where you are today. That
Mm-hmm.
is the art of mentorship, is watching someone to flourish through simply listening and asking the right questions to help them reflect and look within.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, I know throughout the course of your career, you've held leadership positions, whether it be at all levels of education. So I'm sure you've been exposed to good and bad leadership. So I'm curious, from a more broad perspective, how do you, define effective leadership, and what qualities do you think make up great leaders, my friend?
Yeah. I think all of us would say we've had great leaders at one point and not so strong leaders at one point. And then the space of learning is when you ask yourself, what did that great leader do that I want to bring forward and carry forward into the world? And I think I've mentioned this already, but I do think it's having a strong inner compass, having a code that you live by, in integrity, a set of beliefs where you choose kindness, you choose getting it right over being right, you choose courage, you choose to see what's good.
Mm-hmm.
You're and those are all very nuanced things, because I can give you a whole like list of leadership trait 101, right? Effective communicator, what does that mean, right? You can give that list of traits, but
Mm-hmm.
that list of traits is nothing if the person doesn't live it, feel it, and believe it. And so I think it's, you have to know who you are, and you have to be self-aware, and you have to understand that leadership is never asking someone else to do something you're not willing to do. Leadership is recognizing that I'm only as good as the people around me. And if they don't feel valued, then I'm not doing my job. Leadership is in seeing people as who they are in totality, not just as a teacher per se, but as a person, as a parent, as a partner, as an athlete, like whatever they are, like seeing them in totality outside of the school walls. The same way you do with children, by the way. It's finding connection points. It's making sure they understand that one part of your life doesn't define your entire life. One mistake doesn't define your whole life and shouldn't. And that there are redeeming qualities and opportunities every day, when you're a strong leader. And you want everyone to feel safe enough to come to you if they made a mistake. And you want them to come to you when they're celebrating. And you want to be able to find a way to help mentor and guide people. So, like, how would you do this differently next time? What did you learn from this experience? What would you tell somebody in your shoes right now to do?
And just because you sparked my interest to ask this follow-up question before I ask you my last question, as I mentioned, I believe that educators play a critical role in shaping the character of children, especially
Yeah.
at a young age. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you think teachers and early educators, and part of this you answered in your last answer, but how do you think teachers and early educators can help children learn from failure in order to turn it into prosperity, my friend?
It's a great question. I mean, the easy answer, of course, is we need to teach children that it's okay to fail. Just like we need to teach adults that, because there is this stigma around failure
Mm-hmm.
as being bad. And um, failure feels bad. I mean, I failed at things before. I'm sure you have too. Nobody walks away feeling like, yay, that was awesome. I did something and I stunk that up. And no one feels good in those moments. And so it's having a leader who can, again, go back to being direct. So having a teacher that can say, yeah, how did that go? How did that feel when that happened that way? Did that turn out the way you wanted it to? What would you do differently next time? What outcome would you have liked to have seen happen? Okay, what's one thing we can do to maybe get there next time? And that's what I think the beauty is, when instead of shaming or blaming or living in all the missteps of what got you to failure, you have to learn from it. Yes, you do have to have reflection, but young children, they don't know quite how to do that yet. So, but they sure know how to feel embarrassed or shame when something isn't right. And so calling it what it is. Are you embarrassed? Do you feel shame? Are you angry? Are you scared? And then once you can help them figure that out, it's okay, what is one thing we can do right now to help you feel calm, to help you feel successful, to help you feel like you can try again. And I think that's the beauty of when you start to put words to what a child's experiencing when something didn't go their way. That's really what this comes down to, is failure is when something just doesn't go the way you pictured it in your head, which means that we can picture a different outcome. We can picture something differently happening, and we can take the information we have and now start the new story, start the new chapter. And so how do we help give children the opportunity to do that? Is by giving them the words to discuss how they're feeling and teach them that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy, not only in
Mm,
education, but in your own personal life, my friend. How do you want your legacy to be defined?
yeah. This is a hard one. And I'll be honest with you, right now, in my personal life, I have a mother who is terminal with ovarian cancer. And so legacy has been really near and dear to my heart. And then my sister has breast cancer. So I have a lot of stuff in my personal life right now that has me in this space of legacy. And what does that mean? And that life you lived when you're not here, is it like, what are people going to think or say? And I don't, I want people to know that I showed up.
Mm-hmm.
I showed up, and I checked in every day, and I tried to be as present as I could for the people around me when they needed me the most, or when they didn't need me, I still checked in and I showed up for them. I want joy to be known as my legacy and lasting impact. I want people to laugh and know that things can be really wrong and really hard. And if we lose joy and we lose laughter and we lose being silly, and again, going back to being childlike, sometimes I think I'm like a 12-year-old boy in my giggling, my humor, and the way I approach life sometimes,
Yeah.
because it's fun. Life is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be able to laugh when things don't go your way, even when it's really hard. And so I would say I showed up. I was there for people. People could count on me. Stable, consistent, loving, nurturing. But the first one who's going to laugh next to you, and I want to see the people around me succeed. I want to see them be better for knowing me. I want to leave people better than I met them at. That would be something really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Michelle, tell me if people want to get connected to Primrose Schools or yourself personally, what's the best way they can do that?
Oh yeah, just hit up the Google search and type in Primrose Schools. It'll take you to our franchise support center office, and then if you're looking for a school in your market, so like I live in Minnesota, you could just type in Primrose Schools of Minnesota, and the list of all the different locations will come up. We welcome inquiries, people stopping in. Of course, anyone who wants to teach or be in a leadership position. It is a great a great school to work for, and we value people. We value culture. We value children, families, and like I said, belongingness is who we are, and we want to create learning spaces where everyone feels seen and represented and known for who they are and what they contribute.
Well, absolutely. Well, Michelle, as someone who values quality and inclusive education, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to thank you for the work that you've done in the space, the vulnerability you've shown in both your personal and professional life, and providing students and children with, an avenue rather to explore the possibilities that really make them smile. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation, my friend. It's most appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and just have this conversation. These are really important dialogues that need to take place for change. And every time we can do something like this, I think it makes the world a little bit better. And your bright outlook and approach, and like the questions you ask are the right questions. And hopefully, it's the work that we can keep growing together.